24 hours ago, Palestinians looked on the brink of achieving a unity government. President Abbas was in Syria preparing to meet Hamas leader Khalid Mashal.
But negotiations stalled, throwing the whole process into doubt. Syria appears to be doing some last-minute peacemaking between the two sides, but the process and indeed the outcome is still far from certain. Let's cross to our Gaza correspondent Noor O'Day for more on this. Noor, how are Palestinians on the streets responding to these mixed messages coming through?
Well, they're very confused, and their hopes have been going on a roller coaster ride, really, in the past 2 days. Palestinians, all opinion polls have shown that they want these two leaders to meet. They want a government of national unity to be achieved because they want an end to this infighting. However, they don't have a lot of hopes up, given the fact that there are a lot of very real differences between the political programs of both parties. So they do understand the difficulties, but they do hope that they have a lot of hopes on this upcoming meeting, and on the fact that if a government of national unity is not reached, then the Palestinian street may be plunged once again in infighting, which is something that nobody on the street here wants to see.
Mr. Saib Arakat said on Saturday that a unity government must meet the conditions set by the West in order to break the siege. Do Palestinians believe that this is something Hamas cannot accept? Noor, if you can hear me there. Go on, Noor.
The statement of Mr. Saib Arakat reflects the unchanging position of President Mahmoud Abbas, which is any government that will be formed as a government of national unity or a government of technocrats has to be able to speak to the international community and lift the sanctions imposed on the current Palestinian government. Hamas, for its part, says, we understand that these sanctions have been imposed for political reasons. However, the Palestinians shouldn't give away all their political chips. We shouldn't succumb to international pressure and give up all our positions and our basically long-standing political positions. And that's really where the problem is. The problem is whether Hamas will be able to accept such a political program that basically does not go well with its own ideological program, or whether Mr. Abbas will be able to accept some sort of compromise that will allow Hamas to maintain its ideological position while still being in the government. In the end, it's Palestinians here in the occupied Palestinian territory that will pay for whatever disagreement may be between these two sides, or agreement. Whatever happens will translate into events out here on the street in the neighborhoods of ordinary Palestinians, and that's why there is so much anxiety and feelings of disappointment, really, sometimes among ordinary Palestinians.
Yeah, does that lead to some sort of apathy because people see a cyclical pattern developing in this latest impasse between Hamas and Fatah?
You can say there's a little bit of apathy, but really Palestinians can't run away from what's going on. It affects them directly. This is not, a hypothetical political dialogue, if you want, between two political parties that want to reach a government of national unity out of luxury. This is a national necessity. That's how it's being seen here in the street by ordinary Palestinians and political players alike. So they follow these developments and these statements very closely because it does affect their lives. It affects whether they will be able to get paid if they're public servants next month or not. It affects whether the siege imposed on the Gaza Strip will be lifted or not. So it affects every aspect of Palestinians' daily life, and that's why whatever apathy may be produced out of disappointment soon goes away, and a lot of attention is paid to these talks and to these statements.
Interesting. Noor O'Day, thank you very much in Gaza.
While Ethiopian troops appear to have had a relatively easy time driving Islamic Courts fighters out of Mogadishu, ordinary Somalis now find themselves in an increasingly vicious guerrilla war.
U.S. troops are continuing their assault on Islamic Court's gunmen in the country, and villagers there say they're the ones who are suffering. Local leaders have told Al Jazeera that areas near their villages have been bombed.
It's yet another hardship for people already cut off from food and medical supplies. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Addo is one of the few journalists still based in the Somali capital. He sent this report.
In the jungles of the southern tip of Somalia, it may look peaceful, but an unreported war is continuing. It is a war that pits Ethiopian, Somali and US forces against remnants of the Islamic Courts Union, who just weeks ago controlled much of the country. The fighting has taken its toll on civilians. This is Badade town, close to the Kenyan border. Local people say US and Ethiopian helicopters and jet fighters constantly patrol the skies, while Ethiopian troops continue their pursuit of the Islamic Court fighters who are said to be putting up a stiff resistance.
We have nothing to do but sit around. The planes have continued attacking the jungle not far from here. We hear the explosions. We fear for our lives.
All roads leading to Badade remain closed. For people who've just survived the worst floods in a generation, the fighting could not have come at a worse time. The town is facing an acute shortage of food supplies. This woman with a small baby says she has no food to eat. Medical supplies have also run out in the town's only clinic.
The war increased the suffering of the people here. Our stocks of medicine are about to run out. A lot of people and livestock suffer from disease. We call on the international aid agencies to rush their aid to these victims.
In Kulbio, a village 40 kilometers from Ras Kamboni, the base of the Islamist militias, people say US forces are carrying out regular airstrikes against the fleeing militias. The violence has flared up in recent days as the Islamists appear to switch to guerrilla-style tactics. These are the smoldering remains of convoys of their vehicles.
The military plane, the one called the AC-130, attacked us. We know it very well. It is like those strikes in Mogadishu in 1992 when they would take off from the airport near the seashore.
As the fighting continues, it is the people of Somalia who are paying the price. Mohammed Addo, Al Jazeera, Mogadishu.
And we can go over to Mohammed now. Mohammed, we are getting reports that Kenya has captured around 30 prisoners who they say are from the Union of Islamic Courts and sending them back to Somalia. Can you confirm that?
Well, yes, Jane, it's confirmed. Kenya sent back 34 prisoners that it had arrested along its border with Somalia immediately after the Islamic Courts fighters were routed out of Mogadishu and later on Kismayu. The 34 prisoners include other nationalities. They are not all Somalis. They included about many Ethiopian Oromos, 3 Eritreans, and some Somalis of Ethiopian origin, some of whom have got Western passports. And they all were brought back to Mogadishu yesterday in the evening. They were heavily guarded, they were handcuffed, and they had their legs chained together, and they were under heavy security. The government here confirmed that they had received these prisoners, and they have not mentioned what the fate of these prisoners would be.
Okay, Mohammed, what we are trying to get confirmation of is African Union troops coming into the country. Which countries are now prepared to put up men to fight for peace in Somalia? Do we know yet?
Well, so far, publicly, it's only Uganda. Uganda has pledged to send 2 battalions to take care of the peace in Somalia. President Yoweri Museveni has appointed last night commanders to lead the 2 battalions that he is sending to Somalia. Other than Uganda, no other country has yet publicly offered to send their troops to Somalia.
We know that there's been a high-level call for the transitional government to hold talks with moderate members of the Islamic movement. Is that likely to happen?
Well, at the moment, no mention is made of any dialogue between the government and the Islamic Courts officials. And there is also divisions being created when they talk about the Islamic Courts. They describe some as moderates, others as extremists whom should not be spoken to. But there are diplomatic efforts going on, some of them led by the US, according to diplomats, as well as the Arab League, that there should be talks aimed at incorporating the Islamic courts into the government.
Thanks for that, Mohammed Addo.